The World Series is over, and it was a battle down to the very last pitch. After 7 games with 2 of them going into extra innings, the Dodgers may have won, but the Blue Jays outscored the Dodgers in the series 34-26. In the end, the runs don't matter. What matters most is who wins more games, and that's why the Dodgers came out on top. But I'm here to talk about what made the Blue Jays such a strong team all the way through the playoffs, and more specifically, how George Springer embodies what made them such a strong team this year. There are 2 main pieces that I'll talk about here: unselfish aggression and simplicity. And we're going to talk about what Springer does so well where many people make mistakes. So whether you're a player, a coach, a parent of a player, or just a fan of the game, stick around because you're going to learn something today. Comment below what your favorite learning point was, what you disagreed with, or anything else that you feel like saying, but just stay respectful. Let's get into it. Unselfish aggression is the first piece of the game that I watched from all the Toronto hitters. And I know that sounds really weird because those are 2 slightly paradoxical words to use together, but it makes sense and you'll see why. First, aggression. According to this article on MLB.com by Manny Rendawa, Blue Jays hitters swung at the first pitch in a plate appearance 37.6% of the time throughout the postseason, through the first 5 games of the World Series. To this same point in the World Series, the Blue Jays had an astonishing .467 batting average and .800 slugging percentage against the Dodgers. It is well known in baseball, being ahead in the count is a huge advantage. Every at-bat is a battle, especially in the World Series, so naturally the pitcher wants to throw a great pitch on the first pitch of the at-bat. The Blue Jays took advantage of this. George Springer took advantage of this too, with my ChatGPT deep research saying that he swung 30 to 40% of the time at the first pitch of a plate appearance. He had 3 home runs on early pitches of an at-bat, with one of them leading off a game, and one of them being the game-winning home run of the ALCS versus the Mariners. He also had several other big hits on the first pitch of a plate appearance, with 7 of 9 one-pitch at-bats that ChatGPT listed resulting in hits. So that covers the aggressive nature of the Blue Jays, but why do I say they were also unselfish? I watched the players up and down that lineup swing aggressively early, but they weren't trying to do too much. They had a next man up type of attitude in the box. Although they were trying to get hits, that is their job after all, they seemed completely happy to get on base via a walk or a single to the opposite field. These are guys who can hit the ball 400 feet at any point in the game, but they aren't taking these daddy hacks to try to end the game. They are a next guy up type of team who trusts the guy behind them to do his job. George Springer is a great example of that, and that's why he's in the leadoff spot on the team. He'll be aggressive with hitters' pitches, making a pitcher pay, but he'll still lay off of junk, or be willing to try and hit a sac fly to score 1 run and get the next guy up.
I was just trying to get the guy in from third, honestly. I know that no one will believe me, but that's all I was really trying to do. I know who's up behind me. And It was just kind of one of those things where if I can get the guy in from third, hopefully, we just do what we do as a team and on to the next guy.
The unselfish aggression here is a big paradox because they're all capable of hitting the ball far and having a game-changing swing. They could hit a home run, and they do swing aggressively at pitches early in the at-bat, but they also don't need to be the hero. They just want to do enough to let the next guy up. And that leads me to mistake 1 that I see so many players make. I'll use the Phillies as a tough example. This year, the Philadelphia Phillies were poised to make a run at the World Series. They had a great regular season, they had a lineup full of guys who could mash. But when it came down to it, every guy wanted to be the hero. They were aggressive, but there seemed to be a lot of selfishness involved. I'm a Phillies fan. My grandpa scouted for them for years, and so I like watching the Phillies. But watching them this postseason was pretty frustrating for this reason. The Padres are also pretty consistently the same way. So, mistake number 1 is being aggressive to the point of selfishness. Many players know that they're capable of hitting the ball harder than they have been hitting it recently, so they start trying to swing for the fences. I've fallen into this trap plenty of times. This is when the front shoulder starts flying open, the front hip leads the charge, and everything is swinging away from the actual field of play. And here's how you fix that. You let the back hip decide the direction of the swing. When you think of it this way, your front hip stays locked in place while your back hip drives to the ball. If it's inside, you turn hard. If it's outside, you can stay through the outer half of the field hard. Hi, Bubba. I always like to think of it this way. The upper body should always focus on staying inside the ball, almost like you're driving everything to the opposite field with your upper body. The lower body should control the direction. That's how you mechanically solve the problem. Mentally, you should solve this problem by trying to embody this attitude from George Springer in his response when they ask him about the home run to win the ALCS against the Mariners.
I was just trying to get the guy in from third, honestly.
All he was thinking about was getting the ball to the outfield in the air to score the guy from third base. He was just trying to simplify and do his job, which is the mental approach that you should take when trying to fix this mistake. This leads us perfectly into the second piece of Springer's game that I loved watching this postseason: simplicity. And that can be split into two sections as well. Let's dive into the mental side of simplicity. Springer talked about the mental side to the game in this interview posted by Sportsnet at the end of the 2025 regular season. This interview widely focused on the differences between 2024, one of the worst years of Springer's career, and 2025, one of the best. Throughout the interview, he seems to have such a simple approach to the questions from Hazel May.
I mean, me personally, no, I'd stay away from all that stuff. I mean, I can admit it, I sucked last year. It is what it is.
And this reflects in his leadership for the Blue Jays, but also in his approach at the plate.
For me, that was the first step. I need to change that. I need to change my attitude. I need to change my mentality, right? And if I go out there and I line out, and I came back to the dugout and I'm pouty face and angry and slamming stuff, well, there's 25 other guys that are staring at you. And I tried to do a good job this year, whether I made an out or I got a hit or whatever the case was, of, showing true happiness and just not trying to be, angry all the time.
The approach to this season of playing with joy and happiness contributed directly to his production at the plate, but it also contributed directly to the team's production on the season. Have you ever been on a team where someone comes into the dugout throwing equipment and yelling all sorts of things? I've been on plenty of those teams with coaches and teammates being those people, and that energy in the dugout is terrible to be around. It brings everybody else down to that level to some degree. By the way, for a great book on the psychology of why this happens and how one person can suck the energy out of everyone in a room, check out The Energy Bus by John Gordon. It's a great read. But George Springer's approach this year was simple: joy. The other part of the simple mindset from George Springer reflected itself in the postseason's big moments. In the interview I mentioned earlier with the unselfish attitude, he also said this.
In these moments, you have to try to, enjoy them, but you have to try to slow down and breathe. And it's no different than what you do during the season. Yeah, obviously the magnitude of the moment is different, but you've most likely faced this guy before, you've faced the team before, you've been in the situation, so why would you try to do something different than what you do normally in the year?
This is where I see so many people make mistake number 2, and I'll use myself as an example here. In college, I struggled mentally. I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform in every situation. This one is embarrassing to talk about, but I would put so much pressure on myself to perform in batting practice on just a normal day at the baseball field because I thought that day's batting practice would be a make or break on my career. Crazy, right? There's a lot that goes into that thought process, but I'll simplify it for you. I didn't get the playing time that I wanted in college, so I wanted to prove myself in BP. I would get so stressed about trying to prove myself to my head coach that he would be throwing batting practice, and I would want to know so badly what he was thinking about my hitting that I would get mentally carried away with that thought, and I would be looking him in the eyes while he threw the first pitch, and then I would swing and miss because I didn't look at the ball. Consistently, that happened throughout the season. It was a mess, and as embarrassing as it is to admit that, I believe it's something that too many players do to some degree. And actually, something people do too often in life. They take their eye off the ball because they conflate the importance of one little piece, and they make that small little piece a make or break thing to them, to the point where they miss the important little details that would have added up to help them achieve their goals. And here's how to fix that. Live in the moment. Take a note from Springer's book and realize that this moment is no different than the rest of the things you've accomplished in baseball and in life. For me, I realized I wasn't even trusting God with that aspect of my life, and I was grasping it with all my might to the point of missing the entire point of my college career. So focus on each moment as a gift, but not focusing on each moment as something that's going to make or break the next and the rest of your life. Enjoy each moment. Now, for the physical side of simplicity. And this is one of the main reasons I chose George Springer over someone else from the Blue Jays like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's a relatively average-sized guy, if not a smaller guy in the MLB. He's 6'1",
I'm 6'1",
roughly 195 pounds, and he hits like crazy. The coolest thing about this is that an average-sized player can learn to swing just like Springer because he keeps it simple. So let's break down his swing. We'll go through what I call the 7 fundamentals of hitting. Mindset is number 1, and we've already talked about that in great detail, so I'm going to move on to number 2, stance. In this side-by-side comparison of 2024 to 2025, it shows that he has widened his stance slightly and gotten a little bit deeper into his legs. This has allowed him to start in a more powerful and balanced position, needing a smaller load to get the same amount of power stored into his body. And that's number 3, the load. The load is extremely important in a swing because it allows the player to store up a bunch of power into his body. George Springer's load is very simple, and I'll show you the most important part of what I see with that. Watching his head right here, he loads so much power into that back leg, but his head stays still. One of my favorite ways to work on this, if you're using the same load that Springer does, is called the crunch drill. And there's a full breakdown of this in the Elite Hitting System course that I've linked in this video, but I'll show you here. Mostly, what you're trying to do is feel a crunch between your front hip and your front shoulder as you pick up your front foot. Then, you just stretch your toe back to the ground to finish your load. This drill really helps to keep your head still. Number 4 is timing. In this swing, Springer knew he was trying to get the ball in the air to the outfield. He got his foot down on time, had the power loaded, and was ready to adjust to any pitch. He got a 2-seam fastball and adjusted inside to clear those hips. This was all possible because of his getting his foot down on time and early enough to make the adjustment, with his heel up so that he could start the drive by throwing his heel into the ground. And that leads to number 5, the drive. And here's where you can learn a lot from Springer. He's an average-sized guy, but he can mash. And here's the third big mistake I see people make. They get their sequencing wrong during the drive sequence. Springer starts his drive with his heel. As his front heel slams down to the ground, the drive starts simultaneously. His hands start turning down to the zone, his back hip starts to drive towards the location of the pitch, and his back elbow finds his back hip. This is a big sequence here and determines how hard someone can hit the ball. The mistake I see people make a lot of the time is that they start moving their hands before they start moving their hips. Springer's hands start to turn at that point, but his back hip drives forward before his hands drive forward. Then his elbow finds his back hip to let the hips bring the power and the barrel follows. One key to look for is if your elbow gets in front of your back hip, like this, that means you're losing a lot of power. So to fix this, you can work on just the sequencing while you're standing around, like this. Hips before the hands, and the hands turn backwards. I understand it looks kind of funny, some people think it's funny, but guess what? It works. The 6th fundamental of hitting is bat path. And that is really a result of the first 5 fundamentals. George Springer's bat path here is perfect as a result of the first 5 fundamentals. If you watch your swing back and you see that you're swinging too steep, or down to the ball and up and out, or cutting yourself out of the 7th fundamental too soon, then look at the earlier parts of your swing to fix this. And that leads to the 7th fundamental, extension and finish. This is another one that mostly happens as a result of something earlier in the swing. For example, Springer's finish here looks a bit strange if you don't know why it happens. He kind of falls over that front leg and he buckles a little bit, and this is bad if you want to look at a perfect swing, but there's a really good reason why it happens here. Springer has adjusted his swing to an inside pitch. Driving that back hip to the inside pitch on the swing brought some of his momentum towards third base. The reason he hit a home run is because he was able to drive that hip so hard while keeping his hands inside the ball. And the amount of power he produced here caused him to be off balanced after the swing. This can be a problem if you do this on an outside pitch, for example, and that's why I would say to go back and listen to the advice I recommended to fix mistake number 1. Now, you've seen Springer's swing broken down with the 7 fundamentals of hitting, and you should have a better understanding of why it's so good for him. It's simple, repeatable, and powerful, which allows him to keep his head still, see the ball well, and hit the ball very hard compared to other players his size and age. Let's summarize what we've talked about today. The Blue Jays were an amazing team this year, and that's why they were able to accomplish such great things, and make the World Series so exciting. There are 2 main reasons why they were so great, and we use George Springer as an example. They played with unselfish aggression and simplicity of mind and body. These traits are exemplified in so many ways, and I covered what I found to be most important here. One part we didn't address is Springer's faith, which he seems to find extremely important, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has gotten much stronger with his newfound joyful mindset for 2025. These traits make a great leader on and off the field, and they will make you better if you apply them too. That's all for today, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to help it reach more people, help me know if I should make more like it. If I missed anything, put it in the comments, and until next time, thank you, God bless you, stay steadfast.